My name is Miranda. I am 36 years old. I am a wife and a mother. When I got married, I believed in simple things: love, partnership, growing old together. I believed if you tried hard enough, things would work. At first, they did. My husband smiled at me across the breakfast table. He held my hand when we walked. He asked about my day and listened to my answers. We had small dreams: a house, children, a garden, maybe. We talked about our future like it was a country we would visit together. I felt safe with him. When my first child was born, I felt tired but full. It was a boy, my lovely son. I held him at night and watched him breathe. I whispered promises he could not understand. I said, I am here. I will always be here. Those first months were hard. I barely slept. My body ached. But when my son smiled at me, everything felt worth it. My husband tried to help. At first, he changed diapers awkwardly. He rocked the baby at night when I was too exhausted to move. He said, "We're doing this together." I believed him. 7 months later, I got pregnant again. After my second child was born, life became loud. The house was never quiet. Someone was always crying. Someone was always calling my name. I woke up before everyone else. I cooked. I cleaned. I washed dishes. I prepared for the day. I felt like a machine. At night, when everyone slept, I stayed awake a little longer just to feel like myself. My husband changed slowly. He stopped asking how I felt. He stopped sitting beside me. He sat across the room instead. When I talked, he listened with his eyes, not his heart. When I showed him the children's drawings, he would nod. He would say, "That's nice." Then he would look at his phone. I told myself this was marriage. I told myself this was normal. I told myself all couples go through this. One night, I asked my husband something small. I said, "Can you help me bathe the children?" He sighed. He said, "I worked all day. I am very tired. I want to rest." I wanted to say I worked all day too, but I didn't. So I bathed them alone. I dried their hair. I carried them to bed. When I turned off the light, my arms were shaking. There were other moments too. When I cooked my husband's favorite meal, he ate it quietly. No thank you, no smile. When I asked if we could talk after the children slept, he said he was tired. When I reached for his hand, he pulled away gently, not with anger, just distance. I began to feel like I was disappearing. Soon, money became tight. We had enough for the basics, but not for extras. I bought things for the children first: shoes for them, books for them, clothes for them. I wore the same clothes again and again. When people asked, I smiled and said, "I like them." But that was not true. One day, I saw a dress in a shop window. It was beautiful. I stood there for a long time just looking at it. Then my daughter held my hand. She said, "Mama, I'm hungry." I walked away from the window. I never went back. Sometimes late at night, I imagined leaving. I imagined packing a bag. I imagined waking up and choosing what to do with my day. I imagined being someone other than a wife and a mother. Then my son would wake up crying, or my daughter would call Mom, and the thought disappeared because how could I leave them? How could I choose myself over them? One evening, my husband and I argued in the kitchen, not shouting, just tired words. I said, "You never listen to me." He said, "You never understand." We stood there, two strangers who used to love each other. My daughter stood at the door. She listened. I didn't know she was there until she spoke. She said, "Mom, Dad, are you fighting?" I froze. I said, "No, sweetheart, we're just talking." But her eyes were wide open. She looked afraid. Later, she climbed into my bed. She said, "Are you and Daddy going away?" My heart stopped. Tears filled my eyes. I held my daughter close. I felt her heart beating fast. I said, "No, everything is fine." She fell asleep in my arms, but I stayed awake all night. That night, something inside me changed. I realized that my children were watching. They were learning what love looked like from us. And I didn't want them to learn that love meant fighting or leaving or breaking. After that, I stopped talking about leaving, even to myself. I stayed because I did not want my children to be afraid. I stayed because I did not want them to feel broken. I told myself that one day things would get better. I told myself that one day my husband would see me again. 4 years passed. School mornings, homework nights, doctor visits, birthday cakes. I became good at pretending. I smiled at parent-teacher meetings. I laughed with other mothers. No one knew that I felt empty inside. My husband and I lived in the same house, but in different worlds. We spoke about plans, not feelings. We discussed the children's schedules, the grocery list, the bills, but we never talked about us. Sometimes he tried. He brought home food. He asked about the children. He would say, "How was their day?" I would say, "It was good." He never asked about mine. I felt hurt. One day my son asked me, "Mom, why don't you go out with your friends?" I paused. I realized I didn't have friends anymore. I had other mothers I spoke to at school, but not friends who knew me. Not friends who asked how I was and waited for the real answer. I said to my son, "I'm fine." But later, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked tired. I looked like someone who had forgotten how to live life for herself. I stood there for a long time. Then, my daughter held my hand. She said, "Mama, I need help with my homework." And I walked away from the mirror. As my children grew older, they needed me less. They made their own breakfast. They chose their own clothes. They solved their own problems. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt lost. Who was I if I was not needed? One evening, my daughter hugged me and said, "Mom, you always made me feel safe." I smiled, but my heart felt heavy because I had made her feel safe, but who had made me feel safe? Now, when people ask me why I stayed, I don't give long answers. I just say I chose my children. And that is true, but it is not the whole truth. The whole truth is this: my children grew up loved. They grew up safe. They grew up without the pain of a broken home, and I learned how to live with what I lost. I lost the woman I was before I became a mother. I lost the dreams I had for myself. I lost the marriage I thought I would have. But my children gained stability, security, a mother who was always there. Was it worth it? Some nights, I wonder who I might have been if I had chosen differently. I wonder if I would be happier. I don't regret staying, but I carry the weight of the choice I made. I carry the person I used to be. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.